This is Sarah, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you about this week's sponsor, Favor. Favor Inc. is a statewide family-led nonprofit 501c3 organization that is committed to empowering families as advocates and partners in improving educational and health outcomes for our children. Favor is the Connecticut state organization of the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Favor offers a single place for families with children who have medical, mental, emotional, and behavioral health challenges to find information, assistance, and training. To find out more about Favor, please go to favor-ct.org. We are grateful for our opportunity to work with Favor as a sponsor, and now on to the rest of the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I have special guest Dawn Barclay. She is the author of the book Traveling Different: Vacation Strategies for Parents of Anxious, Inflexible, and Neurodiverse. How are you doing today, Dawn?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me on the program. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. You are also the contributing editor for Family Travel and Special Needs Travel at Insider Travel Report. Would you like to tell us about that?
Thank you. Yeah, that is the latest of my travel trade writing. I have been a columnist for various travel trade publications for about 34 years. I started over at Travel Agent Magazine and I worked my way through. I was at Travel Market Report, and Travel Life, and now I'm at Insider Travel Report. And so travel trade publications just mean that I'm writing for the travel trade and telling travel agents how to better work their business. But I also write on a blog for consumers.
Awesome. And would you like to talk a little bit about how you got into that?
Well, my parents owned one of the largest travel agencies in Manhattan when I was young. And I started working for them when I was about 16 in the summers. And then when I left college, I was working full time for them. And I worked my way up to being the manager of their World Trade Center office when there was a World Trade Center. I was then vice president of sales and marketing for a division they had, which dealt with short-term apartment rentals in Europe. This predates Airbnb and all these other companies that came up afterwards. And then I started working for travel magazines full time as an editor. I've worked in various different aspects of the travel industry for a lot of my life.
Awesome. So what made you want to focus on like neurodiverse and special needs travel?
Well, to be honest with you, back in the early 2000s, when I needed a book like this, there wasn't one available. And I wanted to write the book then. And I actually interviewed Dr. Tony Atwood at that time. I ran into him at a conference and I spoke to him and asked for permission to interview, and I did. I also interviewed Dr. Ellen Littman, who's very large in the ADHD community at that time. But then it was difficult to find parents and travel advisors to further, there wasn't enough for a book. And when IBCCES, which stands for the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards, when they created the Certified Autism Travel Professional designation, as well as certified autism centers, which designate various areas, venues and hotels and attractions as autism certified, I found that I had a larger pool of people to interview, and they turned me on to their clients and the parents of children, and I was able to really complete the book.
That's awesome. I have to say, like, for a parent who's traveling with neurodiverse children, two children with autism, it can be a challenge. We have not taken my youngest son to an airport yet because we're truly afraid of how he would react on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
If he has a meltdown on an airplane, that could be traumatic for us, him, and other passengers. Sometimes his meltdowns last for hours.
I completely understand. I have a very large chapter in the book dedicated just to airline travel and how to prepare. And so you never get to that place where there is the meltdown. I would say that of 1,000 people with special needs that were surveyed about travel, 93% said they don't travel, but they would if they knew how and where to go. And again, that's the reason for the book. So I completely understand your dilemma. one thing I would recommend. Many airlines run special programs. I know American just resurrected a program that they put to sleep for 2 years because of COVID, where you can sample the airplane and the airport. There's a program similar called Wings for Autism, which is at a number of different airports around the country. And hopefully they will be resuming what they put aside during the COVID years. And there are airlines that you can call and say, can I have a tour of the airport? And can you walk me through? So there are ways to sample this before actually booking the flight. There are also certain airports that have sensory rooms.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, so when you're
Yeah.
waiting, you have a place to go. And I also recommend in the book that if you have a connecting flight and you have a layover, that you should research what's available at that location ahead of time. But through the use of social stories and visual schedules and showing videos and explaining again and again what's going to happen, you create a level of predictability that the child can rely on when he does or she does go to the airport.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Our actual preferred method of travel with him is car. So we will drive from Connecticut to Missouri. Not we haven't done that during the COVID years, but we have done that prior to the pandemic. We're hoping to get to do that this summer. Drive from Connecticut to Missouri. It's an 18-hour drive. He does pretty, I gotta say, he does very well. He's used to being in the car with mommy, daddy, and brother. We take him, he loves car rides.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so our son is used to that. He loves that. Our oldest son gets a little antsy in it, but he's like, it's okay. Like we stop to eat and stuff like that, stretch our legs. He gets really excited in the new hotel room. It's all over the place.
So he loves hotels. He loves
Yeah,
going to, interesting.
he's like, woohoo, there's two beds, like yay. You know, it's hard to get him to sleep a little bit. It's hard to get, all the adjustments and changes. Our last vacation, we slept in 4 different places in 2 weeks. Between the Airbnb we stayed at near my in-laws' house, the hotel on the way there, the hotel on the way back, came home and slept, and then we ended our trip. Oh, we stayed we also stayed at a hotel for a couple nights. We went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with him. We took our boys there. We came home, we slept home for a night, and then we packed up to go camping. I mean, and ended our vacation with a weekend camping trip. So this poor kid had so many transitions, and I have to say, I have to give it to him because in that time he had 3 meltdowns. That was it. In
That's
that
pretty good.
in that whole time. The rest of us were like, we were all excited but ready to melt down. I think my older son had a little bit of a harder time with some of the transitions than my younger son, but he does, fantastic in the car and he does fantastic in camping. Um,
What are the methods that you use on the car trip to help smooth it along?
you ready for some bad parenting? The iPad.
No, that's not bad parenting. I've got to tell you how many people recommended electronics for the cars. You're right in line with what everybody
It's
said.
18 hours of his
Yeah.
favorite cartoons and
Yep.
snacks. Lots
Yep.
of snacks.
Yep.
18 hours of his favorite cartoons and snacks. I know that there are a lot of parents who cringe at screen time, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes, especially if you got to be somewhere in 18 hours and you have an 18-hour drive or 2 days, you have a time limit, or if you're taking a plane. You
Sure.
got to do what you got to do to calm your kiddo down. And if it's screen time, then it's screen time. Um,
Not one parent said, I don't like screen time. I don't believe in it. I think there was one parent who said, we don't do it at a restaurant. Other than that, heavy reliance on electronics, noise canceling headphones, the snacks that you suggested, a go-to bag is, I repeat in every chapter practically about what you should put in a go-to bag, because I believe that readers will probably skip around the book. If they're going on a train trip, they'll go to that chapter. If they're going on a car trip, they'll go to that chapter. But there's always a list of what you might bring in a go-to bag to be prepared for anything. And you'll be happy to know that the book of what you mentioned, there's a chapter on car travel, train travel, how hotel travel, how to evaluate a vacation rental or Airbnb ahead of time, and also camping.
Yes. Oh, awesome. I have to get this book. I know because camping is one of our favorite activities. That's something we do every weekend, or not every weekend, but many weekends in the summer. Something I grew up doing. And again,
Mhm.
travel is like important to us. I find a lot of families with neurodivergent children, specifically kids who are more profound on the autism spectrum, do not travel. And I know that there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is cost.
Yeah.
Um, the cost of caring for a child with special needs can be astronomical sometimes. The other reason is, again, how will my child behave, react? Is it worth it to go on a vacation that we're going to have to leave? What would you say to those parents? Do you have any advice?
Absolutely. First of all, I do recognize that not every family can afford the vacations. A lot of my book, I would say 85% of my book are methods and strategies as opposed to destinations. So these are things you can use anywhere. I have chapters on restaurant dining. I have suggestions on starting small. So starting small might be to sample a hotel. You go to a friend's house or a relative's house for the night and see how the child reacts sleeping in a bed different than theirs. For camping, camp out in the backyard for a night to sample that. For tours, even I've said this before, even a trip to a garage sale can be framed as an adventure, as a treasure hunt. Trips to local aquariums and zoos, that can be said as a tour, so that when you later go on a tour, if you do go on a tour, you can refer back to that as a reference point. See, you got through that, that worked well. There are discussions of theme parks. And again, those can be expensive. And it shocks me how many children on the spectrum really like amusement parks, because I had knowledge of people who did and who didn't, and a lot of them love it. Train travel can be hugely popular for a child. In fact, children on the spectrum, many of them just adore trains, and that's their obsession. So I profile a child named Romeo who's part of Travel Sparks Facebook group, which is a social club for people who love trains and different transportation, and just what he's done with loving trains and traveling all over the UK to visit different train routes and memorizing the train routes. And it's a great story. So train travel, car travel, all of that is explained. I also talk about cruises, but there is a company called Autism on the Seas, and they even have like a scholarship grant type program for people who can't afford to travel on a cruise but want to. So all ranges can really enjoy this book, all economic ranges. I would also say that starting small is really important. And that includes just going over picture books that involve favorite characters traveling. And again, just anything you're doing locally. If you're going to an Italian restaurant, you can frame that as like sort of a mini trip to Italy. You can sample the food. You can talk about uh, maybe introduce a couple of Italian words. I mean, just make the child aware that there is a world outside of the world that he or she is experiencing now.
Yes. And that's something we're huge advocates for as, on Caregiver Chronicles as parents. We don't want to be locked inside of our house for the rest of our lives with our kiddo. Our goal is to get our kids out there and be out there and make the rest of the world a little bit more inclusive. Um, we have a few tips that we like as well. On one of them, because our son is an elopement risk, is bells. If you stay in a hotel or an Airbnb, if you get bells for the door, you could put, and you can hear, you can even buy bells at a dollar store. Just make sure that they're loud enough that you'll hear them. That's one of our travel tips. I don't know if you have that one.
I have the different locks and alarms that you could put on doors. I have a lot of
Awesome.
safety tips, anywhere from sewing a GPS into their clothing if you're going on a tour, to taking a picture of them outside the amusement park so you have a picture of them in their current clothing. There are people who use sort of tethers to hold on to kids. Lots of tips like that. And you can
Yes.
pick and choose what works for you. I did want to also say, I want to just backtrack for a second when we're talking about starting small. Is I have a very long chapter in the book about museums and events that cater to special interests that children on the spectrum often have and can obsess about for up to 16 hours a day. So even a trip to the local, something within driving distance might have a museum that your child will absolutely adore because it caters to his or her special interest. The whole, I think, a key to traveling with a child on the spectrum is making the trip child centric. It's about them. It's not about you. And if you want to have that bonding experience and you want to avoid meltdowns, and you have to prepare the child for the trip, and you have to go to some place that's going to cater to their interests.
Yes, I agree with that, and that's kind of why we chose the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. My youngest son, is a Beatles fan. Um,
Perfect.
And he like loves, if you change a Beatles song on him, he will let you know. He will get mad. And that's his calm down music, and he just loves it. And it was a very overstimulating place. It's not an autism friendly place. Which to no fault of theirs. It just is. He had a moment of stimming where he was like jumping up and down, biting his chewy, just really stimming hard. Some woman gave me the dirtiest look in the world, like, what kind of mother are you? Like, what's wrong with your
Yeah.
child? What's wrong with you? And I just looked back at her like, don't turn around or I'll hurt you. Like, I'm not a violent person, but but we found a spot there. We found the Beatles section, and as soon as he heard Paul McCartney's voice, he was just calm.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But we were hitting a point where we were thinking we're gonna have to leave. Like, this stinks. We're gonna have to leave. But we found an area that really calmed him. And then eventually we were able to take him through other spots. My husband and I switched off with sitting with our youngest son and touring the facility with our oldest son, who again is a huge music fan, was reading like what is rock and roll, the history of rock and roll, biographies on Aretha Franklin, biographies on the Beatles, biographies on the Rolling Stones.
Wow.
On the way to and from the Hall of Fame, like in that trip, he was reading all these books, the kid level biographies, obviously, but still, like, just, getting to know these bands, and he just really appreciated it as well. We all loved it. It was a great trip. So I agree with that. Try to make the trip centered around some, at least something your child likes. And for us, it's music is a common thing my whole family loves.
Uh-huh.
So that's what we do. And camping, my son loves camping on the beach. It's like going to a giant sandbox for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to say two things based on what you said. One is the looks from onlookers. I have a whole section on how parents deal with that. And they usually have just worked to make their child very self-accepting, so the child can even go up to the people and say, oh, I want to introduce myself. Hi, I have autism. Look, I wave my hands when I'm excited. Isn't that great? So that they're not ashamed, and they're not flustered by people looking at them. But all long chapter about that. Also, when you talk about sand, there are so many kids who maybe have not experienced the beach. And one of the parents I spoke to said, go to a craft store, buy a bag of sand, put some sand on the ground, and have them walk on it ahead of time and get used to that feeling, so it's not a shock when you get to the trip. A lot of the tweaks involve all that sort of pre-prep. Think the trip through, prepare accordingly, get the child ready, whether it's a social story or showing videos or a visual schedule or whatever it is. Reinforce, make it predictable.
Yes. Also, if you're taking your kid out to the beach for the first time and you're not sure if they're going to run right for the water, have something where they can't. Make sure you got a good grip on them, or we use a harness
Yeah.
that attaches to us with Joey for safety, because he will run right into the water.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there is a whole checklist of how to evaluate a campground as well. And one of the things that the travel advisors emphasized is, if your child can't swim, stay away from a campground near water.
That's a really good point. Or at least have, like I said, we have him on the harness the entire weekend at the beach.
Great.
That being said, he's happy on it and content on it. He could still play in the sand. He can still play with his toys. But if we turn our back, he's not going to be gone.
Perfect.
He'll be near us.
Perfect.
And that's just, one of my, as someone, again, who has to take my kids out into the world, I refuse to have them stuck in the home just because they're different. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to us. It's not fair to the world. The world needs to get to know everybody. My next question is, what are some best inclusive and affordable vacation spots?
Well, I will say that camping if you're talking about affordable, camping is a great idea. A lot of the certified autism centers, there are a number of organizations that are certifying now. So, whereas some of them might be pricey, like there's one resort, Sandals and Beaches, which is perfect. I mean, they are dedicated themselves to this population. It might be out of some people's price range. So a lot of times I even talk about how you can go to a city like, say, Philadelphia, which you would not say, oh, it's not particularly autism friendly. I mean, certainly not accredited or certified like Mesa, Arizona. That whole city is autism certified. No matter where you go, the people have been trained to help you. And it's the same thing for Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. They have made their whole city dedicated to this. Also, Lake Havasu in Arizona, the tourist board has a dedicated person just promoting autism friendlies. But say you go to something like Philadelphia, I list how to handle a hotel, even if it's not autism certified, but within maybe a day trip, there are 6 or 7 locations that are, from Sesame Place to Valley Forge, just numbers of them that you can make your own trip based on that. So that would probably be a more affordable, though I'm not saying that all theme parks are that affordable, but it's still not as expensive as an all-inclusive holiday.
Yeah, or like Disney.
Disney is expensive. Yep, but they really do a great job. Most people I spoke to said for this community.
Yeah. And touching back on like museums and aquariums for day trips,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of local libraries will have museum passes and day trips. And also, if so, for our son, we actually we live in Connecticut, and Mystic Aquarium is known, it's pretty well known. Mystic Aquarium actually has a program where if you're autistic, you get in at a discount, and one caregiver gets in free. So we get a discount for our son and then a caregiver pass. So that's really helpful. There's also the National Parks Pass too.
Right.
Um,
I talk about that. Yeah.
awesome. Awesome. We know about that, and we've been up in the Arch. We didn't even have the pass yet, but we have
Wow.
been to St. Louis up in the Arch, and we did again. He did a great job up there. No meltdowns in the Arch. A little bit, like we couldn't stay as long as some of the other people. My advice to parents is take your kid everywhere and anywhere you can. What do
Yeah.
you think of that?
I agree. I also would have the caveat that call ahead, because even if a location has been certified, or say I list my properties in the book as either autism certified or autism friendly. In either case, you should really call the property in advance, not only to verify that all the information in the book is accurate, because things change amazingly fast, but to ask, what does that mean? What does that certification entail? Because you might find that it isn't offering what your particular child needs, since every child is different. But also, they might have a sensory friendly time, but it might not be happening when you're there. There are some that only have 1 day a month, but they're still calling themselves autism friendly. So you have to double check. So, and I think what you did was brilliant. I did not know about the Mystic Museum. But I think that if a parent calls ahead and says, what do you offer for people on the spectrum or people with invisible disabilities, you will find that you can save some money.
Yes, and I just want to like I said, I want to share that tip because we're the family that, we recognize the cost of caring for our son can be astronomical, and we still want to take him places, and that's,
Sure.
the best thing that you can do. You can also ask another advice for family members, ask for passes to museums or things like that for Christmas gifts for your kiddos on the spectrum rather than toys. If there's places where you can take them, that's awesome.
Brilliant.
So I want to switch gears just a little bit. And I want to talk a little bit about the pandemic and how that's affected kids on the spectrum. A lot of kids on the spectrum and just neurodiverse children, just people in general, are struggling to reacclimate to society. Do you think the pandemic has made it a lot harder for families to travel, even with, we're kind of starting to get into a post-COVID situation. Do you think that that's really hindered families' abilities to travel?
It's funny you should mention this because I just wrote an article that'll be in the July issue of Autism Parenting magazine about post-COVID travel. And I did speak to various certified autism travel professionals about this. And I know that one woman who's an advisor, but also is a grandmother to a child on the spectrum, said how difficult it was because of the masks. And they still want the child to wear the mask. And one of the things they did was start really early, like probably months in advance, and build on mask wearing with a prize at the end. So maybe the first day was 5 minutes, and then they worked up to 10 minutes and 15 minutes so that when it was time for the trip, it worked. And he was able to get through most of the trip without a problem. I think that's the biggest issue. I mean, I talk about all the issues that would be happening, COVID or not COVID, like getting through TSA and things like that. What specifically are you referring to? And I mean, because hotels are not really back up to where they were, many of them. If they did offer certain amenities, maybe they are not all up to speed yet. There is a deficit of hospitality workers right now. I don't know that you should be rushing in. Everybody is rushing in. It's really crowded at the theme parks. I was speaking to somebody who runs a podcast who is on the spectrum, and his children are on the spectrum, and he's a college professor. And he was saying he's hearing from all over that they've never been more crowded. It was the busiest day ever in Austin at the airport. So people are traveling, but I think they may find things are not up to where they were, and they might be disappointed. You might, again, call in advance and ask what they're offering and what they're not offering, and just not go by the description online. Yeah. Does that answer the question, or did you want to be more specific?
No, that's a pretty good answer, is that, things aren't the way they were pre-COVID. And so traveling that's definitely created a hurdle. And like you said, the mask wearing, that's created a hurdle with getting back in.
Yeah, I think car travel is still a really good idea if you don't want to worry about masks en route.
Or in camping. Camping is mostly outdoors, and I don't think anywhere is really requiring outdoor masks other than like large venues, like large concert venues. But I think like most outdoor places aren't really requiring masks, right? But I'm not sure everywhere.
Yeah, and you can also rent an RV if you don't want to go camping. I talk about that. I mean, also, if you're worried about large hotels, you might consider a vacation rental. And you'll be the only family there, most likely. So, you don't have a lot of interference. Houseboats, how to rent a houseboat, that's there. So
I've actually never thought about renting a houseboat. I don't think I'd want to do that with my kids, but that'd be so fun for me and my husband for a weekend getaway.
Yeah. They train you how to use the houseboat, and you don't necessarily have to go down the river. You can just stay on the boat dock, but it's just an alternative to staying in a hotel.
I feel like that would be so fun. I'm not a big hotel person either. We've done the Airbnb thing, and we tend to like that more. A hotel chain that we really liked with our kids because it had that like apartment-y vibe and we had space was the Royal Sonesta Executive Suites.
Okay.
Or the Sonesta Executive Suites. They're kind of like a family-friendly chain, and they have like I don't know if you've ever seen one or better one, but their layouts are like apartment style. Like you have the full kitchen, you have a living room area, we had a bedroom area, and then we had an upstairs with a loft area, and then there was a bathroom upstairs and a bathroom downstairs. So we had more bathrooms than in our house.
Nice. And it's a nice thing because there's always a place to sort of calm down and decompress. And I think it was Tony Atwood who said, even if you're in a smaller hotel room, you might use the closet. You might put the bedding in the closet so the child has a place to get away.
Space. Yep.
Yeah.
Nope.
No, I agree that apartment hotels, also residence inn, places like that are excellent because you really want to have a kitchen or a kitchenette. You don't always want to go to a restaurant because it is very chaotic. I do talk about restaurants and how to work with them, but every parent I spoke to said, get a hotel with a kitchenette so you don't always have to eat out.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, and that's a good cost saving tip too. Plus, if you have a kiddo who's pretty much they'll only eat chicken nuggets, there's no point in paying $10, $12 for chicken nuggets every single meal.
Yeah, yeah. No, another parent had a great idea about when you go to a restaurant with a buffet that might not necessarily have what your child wants, but on the buffet there are aspects like there might be a buffet with bread and in another area cheese, and you can go over to the chef and say, "Can you make my kid a grilled cheese sandwich?"
Buffets are actually, my kids love them, like the Chinese buffet. My kids will eat Chinese food.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not too, my kiddos aren't too picky. They'll both eat like fish, Chinese food. So we'll
Great.
try to get them into other stuff. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
that is really good.
Yeah.
My youngest son won't eat pasta though, but he'll eat salmon. So
Wow. That's good.
he was eating an onion. Yesterday, he took an onion off the counter and just peeled it and started eating it like it was an apple.
No.
I was like, it's good for your immune system, but that's gotta taste bad. I mean, it can't hurt, right? But I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you said, even going to a restaurant, like that's something that we do as a family. My son's still in a high chair because he'll be running all over the place and he's getting too big for the high chair. Do you have any tips for that?
Some parents just let their child walk around or sit on the floor. I was never a parent that wanted my child running through the restaurant, but I like the idea of, if you want to walk around the table or just sit on the floor, that's okay. They also most people recommended having the screens for the table, except for this one parent who said no. And some things like if it's going to be a long wait for the waitress to come back, first of all, order their food first or order something quick for them. You might even call ahead so it's waiting for them. Or some people said have the child eat at home and just order dessert for them while the rest of the people are eating so there's not a long wait. But if there is going to be a long wait, maybe bring a stopwatch and say in 10 minutes we're going to go for a walk outside. So it's a bite-sized amount of time. The child can look at the watch and wait for it and then know they're going outside. And then if the food still hasn't come, reset the watch. It's another 10 minutes. So there were a lot of hacks like that can get you through the restaurant, but also making sure that the waiter has your credit card ahead of time and warning him, you know what, we may have to leave early. You've got my credit card. If we have to leave, just charge it.
Yeah. Another thing I do when I get to restaurants is I'll usually ask the hostess if we could have bread brought to the table for the child. We don't always call ahead. Sometimes we do. There have been restaurants we've called ahead for to get a specific type of table that we can fit his booster seat at.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're told when we arrived at the restaurant that there was nothing available or that they didn't have anything available or that it wasn't safe to put that type of chair with that type of, and it's like, well, we called ahead. We made a reservation with the specific accommodation.
Yeah. That's a shame.
Other than just saying, hey, we're very disappointed because of this. Do you have any advice on that or just don't go back?
I would just say to write a letter. I think you have to find the restaurants that are going to cater to what you need. I wish I had better advice on that. I didn't have that come up a lot. So I apologize. I don't have that.
We actually went to the restaurant next door and that was a sports bar and like a very loud, crowded restaurant. We're like, we need this type of chair and can we have some bread brought to the table or some French fries brought to the table? And they said, yep, we gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the people I spoke to advised always going to family-friendly restaurants. And there was, really a shortage of restaurants that catered specifically, like whereas I had hotels and resorts and museums and attractions that were specifically certified, there was none for restaurants. I found one restaurant in New Jersey in Toms River that has a sensory room and is really dedicated to autistic children or children on the spectrum. And that was it.
Yeah.
So there has to be some more work done in that area.
I completely agree. I know there are local restaurants that we'll go into and we'll see, they kind of know, the local small restaurants, you kind of get to know them, like the people who work there, they get to know the families. And there was one Thai place actually that the waitress didn't care. She was like, my son's throwing rice everywhere. We're like, can we just get a broom so we can sweep this up? She's
Yeah.
like, he's fine, it's fine. She's like, you're happy, he's happy. She's like, I'm glad
Oh,
he's eating. She
that's
has a nephew
great.
on the spectrum, and she was just like, my nephew is autistic, so she's like, I kind of understand. She's like, I'm glad to see you guys out, like,
That's
you know,
wonderful. I
um,
wish more places were like that. I would say that what makes the places that are certified special and certified is that their staff has had a lot of training, and I think it's needed on a continuing basis. They have to get it on a continuing basis to remain certified so that they understand the population and they know how to deal with them. So that's what it sounds like this woman
yeah.
had done.
Yes, well, she had
Oh, she
you
had
know,
it. Yeah.
she had a nephew, and so she probably just wanted to do everything she can to help, which I
Yeah.
don't blame her, you know.
Yeah. That
So
understanding is vital.
well, exactly it is. Do you do travel for people with physical disabilities, not just like neurodiversities?
Um, there are travel agencies that do that. That is not really included in the book. There are plenty of travel agents that specialize in accessible travel and wheelchair travel, but that was beyond the scope of this. Book is already 344 pages. So no, not in there.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. In Do you know of any travel agencies that might talk about traveling with Alzheimer's? Because that's another really big thing. And a
I,
lot of times, family members with Alzheimer's kind of, again, they're stuck home.
you know, it's a good topic for another book. It is not in this book, but it's something I will consider for a future book.
Awesome. Well, let me know if you need
Yeah,
any advice for that or anything like that, or come back to Caregiver Chronicles to talk about it.
absolutely. Thank you.
We took my that was fun. We took my grandmother with Alzheimer's and my two kids with autism camping.
Oh, wow. And
That
how
was
was
fun
that?
though. How was it? It was my birthday weekend. You know what? It was it had some hot mess moments. I'm gonna share it. So my grandmother did not want to put her nightgown on. She wanted to go home. The kids were already, well, one kid was already asleep. He was asleep, like done for the night, out cold. The other kiddo was sleeping. My older son was gonna sleep in the bed with Meme, so if she got up, he could come get me so I could help her up and help her to the bathroom because she was at the point where she needed help going to the bathroom. So my older son was in the bed with Meme so he could come get us. Again, he's less, he doesn't have the support needs as a lot of other people on the spectrum do. My younger son, however, nonverbal, high support needs. And then my grandmother, no idea where the hell we were or what we were doing, but we were camping, trying to get our nightgown on her. Mind you, I had had a maybe like two beers already, so I was like, my husband was staying straight. It was my birthday. I had a couple beers, but I'm trying to help my grandmother put her nightgown on. She takes the nightgown off of her and puts it on me and says, "You wear the fucking thing." And it was just, it was. What do you do? Like, do you cry? Do you get angry? Nothing. I just laughed. I called my mom. I said, "Mom, come here." And it kind of got to the point where it was like, we're gonna have her sleep in her clothes so she's ready to put her nightgown on.
Yep.
And then, but she did great. She had fun at the pool. She didn't remember the trip, but we did. And so that's what made it special for us is that we had the following summer she passed away.
I'm
Um,
sorry.
so that was our last like big special memory with her was a camping trip with her and my kids and my family for my birthday. And, I couldn't have asked for, a happier way to, I don't know, just a happier like summer, a happier
Yeah.
birthday.
Well, I'm
Um,
happy you had that memory, and I think you learned an important lesson about picking your battles. It
yeah.
didn't matter that she slept in her clothes.
She got up later in the night and we were able to get her in her pajamas and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it just sometimes it just takes time. And like I said, not taking your loved one somewhere because they're not going to remember it or realize is kind of, it's robbing you of an important memory and an important time.
absolutely. I've had
You know,
parents who said, people tell us, why don't you just save the money? Why don't you wait until they're older and they can remember this? And I said, but I'll remember it. And when they get older, they'll be involved in their own lives and they won't want to travel with me. So I want this time now.
yep. Exactly.
Yeah,
Robbing yourself of that time with your kids or your grandparents or whoever else just isn't fair.
right.
Um,
I agree.
so take those, and if COVID's taught us anything, it's take that opportunity when you can. So when does your book come out again?
It comes out August 15th, but it is available now for pre-order, at least for the hardcover and the audiobook version. You won't be able to pre-order the ebook until it comes out because that's just the nature of ebooks. But August 15th. Pre-order it
Awesome.
now. The digital is not going to be priced much less than the hardcover, so you might as well get the hardcover. It's like travel insurance. You take it and you'll use it again and again, and it'll save, your vacation from being a problem.
Awesome. And is there any other tip you want to share for families who are traveling?
Oh, other than making it child centric and always remembering your noise canceling headphones and always remembering your go bag, is get the child involved in the planning of the trip. Offer different options, but make sure they're all pre-approved options. So no matter what choice the child makes, you're okay with it. There can be no wrong answers, but if you get the child involved um, and seek input, they have a vested interest in the success of the trip. And I think that's important too.
Awesome. I think that that's really great advice. And where can my audience find your book?
Well, it's called Traveling Different: Vacation Strategies for Parents of the Anxious, the Inflexible, and the Neurodiverse. It's on all major online retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, the indie sites, internationally as well as domestically. Be sure to ask your library to carry it because I think that would be important too. And the Roman and Littlefield website as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And where can my audience find you if they want more information on you or your articles?
Well, I've got a website that will be backing up the book and updating it because these things change by the day. And I'm at travelingdifferent.com, and that's traveling with one L.com. I also am on Twitter as travelingdiff, DIFF, and I update there as well. And I'm on Facebook, but it's like Traveling Different as the name.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dawn. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about travel, sharing travel stories. You're making me ready to plan my next vacation.
Yay!
And I want to thank everyone for listening this week to this week's episode of Caregiver Chronicles. You can, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments about this episode, you can reach us at caregiverchroniclespod@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Caregiver Chronicles, Instagram, Caregiver Chronicles 2, and Twitter, Caregiver Chron 1. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.